series where we're talking about challenges. And this morning when I thought of, hey, what's a great challenge that we all we have the opportunity to be a part of, starting as early as the age of like way little, like maybe 1, 2, with some simple things. No matter how old we are, we can all engage in the challenge of a puzzle. If you didn't find a puzzle piece when you got here, that's because you're sitting on it. You can grab that there, but when you look at this piece of puzzle, how many of you are like puzzle people? Like maybe you want a t-shirt. Lots of puzzle people. I knew it was a thing, right? I'm like puzzle people. And like you have family stories of puzzles, right? I mean, I think about growing up. We had the kitchen table where all the Grishams ate. There was 5 of us. And then we had the dining room table that we only ate on like at Thanksgiving, maybe Christmas. That was really about it. I studied there. I remember studying there when I was in school. But the majority of the time, what went on the dining room table was the puzzle, right? My dad loves puzzles. I think my mom likes puzzles. If you showed up at my dad's house now, first off, he'd be like, oh, y'all come on in. They would have some food ready for you, I guarantee you. But he would have a puzzle over on a side table, right? How many of you, that's you? And like you would love like, hey, get me the Christmas gift, just get me a puzzle, right? And then you're going to take it out, or on vacation, you're like, we're working a puzzle. Like everybody's like, I'm going to the pool. You're like, nope. I'm working a puzzle. But when I think about a puzzle, I have a border piece up here. When I think about a puzzle, it really is a challenge. It kind of in a way seems harder than it should be. I mean, think about it. You get the answer right in front of you. You have the picture. Some of them have the big fold out poster. And there it is. There's what you're shooting for. You fold that thing out, and then you have all the pieces in front of you. And you're like, okay, all I got to do is take all these and put them together like that. But the challenge of a puzzle is tough. I mean, there's like micro challenges within the big challenge, right? I mean, how many of you, and I think this is like universal, like you have to do the border first, right? Isn't that right? Like you cannot move forward. I remember my dad going through everything. No, we have not completed the border, and I have a border piece up here. So like sometimes I could like stick it in my pocket and just wreak havoc. Right? Isn't that kind of fun? But then you begin to realize, okay, well, there's a lot of green over here. So you create this other little micro challenge. You get all the green pieces together. Then there's a red thing, something over here. So you get all that together. That looks like a car. And then over here, you're like, well, there's a house. So we're going to put all that together. So we develop all these little micro challenges within the big challenge that is the puzzle. There's even the challenge of how big of a puzzle do you want, right? Do you need the 300 piece? That's like an easy quickie, right? 1,000, I think that's like kind of like when you're hitting the sweet spot. That's like the good puzzle people. Did you know the biggest puzzle is 60,000 pieces? I researched it. That's the only way I know. 60,000, 8 feet tall, 29 feet wide. Google it, Costco. They said they had it. To me, there's so many challenges in that. I'm done. But when you think about putting all the puzzles together, you think about the challenges that happen, right? You pick up one piece, you're like, nope, that doesn't work, and you put it down. You have days where you sit down and you're like, man, I am like puzzle magician, and you're putting them together all over the place. You're like, this is a great puzzle day. And then you have days where you're looking, it seems like nothing fits. Right? I had puzzle days where I would force pieces together. I'm like, okay, it's going to go, it's going to work. And my dad would look at it, and like later on, we realized that didn't work out so well. Right? But there are so many challenges within a puzzle. How many of you have ever gone to this state? You want to take your arm or the box or the table or whatever it's on and just rake it off. Either put it in the trash can or put it back in the box and put it in the closet because you're done. Like you've lost interest, it's too hard, or Thanksgiving came and you were told the dining room table had to have Thanksgiving dinner on it. Right? There's moments where we're just like, I am done with this puzzle. I'm putting it in the box and it is over. As I thought about our challenges that we're talking about, the reality is I think our life is very much like a puzzle. You think about it, our life, it's full of challenges. Our life has micro challenges, then we have the big challenges that we're trying to face. At times we tackle this challenge over here, and then you're like, I gotta take a break, that one's wearing me out. And then we go jump on this challenge over here. But at the same time, we feel like we have all the pieces, right? I have who I am, I have my experiences, I have my family, I have my education, right? I have what I think about finances. I have what I think about politics. I have what I think about the overall economy in the world. Like, I have all these pieces, and I have this big idea of where it is that I want to go. But I find in life that it just doesn't always go together. I'm picking up one piece and going, well, how does that fit over here? And I can't figure it out. So then I go to this piece over here. And there are times, maybe not in the whole big challenge of life. I hope that's not the case. If it is, let us know and we'll help, get some counseling. But I want to give up. I want to give up on some of the micro challenges because I've just had enough of it. As we look into these challenges, as you face challenges in life, maybe it's just working on a puzzle, or maybe it's in your life in general, we find that we have two options. We can either quit, or we can push forward with the challenge. We can either say it's not worth it, or we can say, I want to get better. We can either say, I'm putting it back in the box, or we can say, I'm going to drive this challenge to completion, whatever it takes. What I found when we look at challenges in our life is that whatever challenge you tackle, and especially when you complete a challenge, it does make us better. And challenges truly make us better at life. So that's a simple reason why we're digging in to this study of a guy named James who continued to give challenges to people who would begin to say, I've put my trust in Jesus. Over the next several weeks, we're going to look at his challenges. We're going to look at what he was saying to people who had really were leaving the faith they had grown up in, which was Judaism. They had followed 613 laws, and now they were saying, I have put my trust in Jesus, in his grace. And those laws, they're dead. That's temple worship. We are now going to worship God. We're going to worship his son who he sent for each and every one of us. That's who James was writing these challenges to. As we look at these challenges, if that's you, you're like, I've put my trust in Jesus, then he was writing these to us. And just as he cared about those he was writing to, I care about you, because I want all of us to take steps to grow in our faith. What I love about his challenges is that he wrote all this down after he had led for 20 years. Who you want to take advice from? Someone that's just like green behind the ears, or has 20 years of experience? He had 20 years of experience of leading the first church. And he was writing this down so that we all could hear it together. The choice will be ours. Do we accept the challenge or not? In the book of James are all of these challenges. And as we wrap up each and every week together, you can decide, do I put my trust? Do I accept the challenge and continue to move forward? Our challenge this morning, the very first one, comes out of the book of James. It's James chapter 1, verse 2. Here's what it says. We're going to jump into this together. It says, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds. That's where it started. The question that I think deserves an answer is why? Why did James begin there? Why was James telling them to consider their trials pure joy? Remember, these were Christ followers who had been following 613 laws. And what he knew about their lives is that they had incredible trials all throughout their lives. Because as they were breaking away, there were people trying to pull them back in. This was all brand new. So what James knew and what he experienced in the lives, and I know it's in our lives as well, as they were living these fractured lives, their lives were divided. They actually were living what's really called a circumstantial faith. What we mean by that is that when they understood it, when it all made sense, when the circumstances lined up, they were like, yes, I am all in. But then when their circumstances didn't line up, when they didn't understand it, when they couldn't process who God was, when they couldn't see that finish line, when the challenge got really super tough, then they would pull back. And they would say, I'm not sure that I really believe that anymore. I think for me and you, for those of us who've put our trust in Jesus, we can experience that too. When our trials get incredibly tough, it's really hard to hunker down and say, I'm going to continue to trust in this. And when we do that, what it causes us to have is inconsistencies within our character. That's what he saw in them. Because when we're all in and we're like, hey, I get this, we're like, man, let's go. And hey, God, you're awesome. But then when times get tough and you don't understand it all, our conversation and our words, what we believe, what we lean into, tends to sound totally different. When we look at what James was talking about, when we look at the people that were hearing his message, I don't believe it's that much different than us. And while we don't want to have inconsistent faith, it happens from time to time. So that's the why. He's like, hey, I want to help you live a Christ-centered life, to be more Christ-like, to get into alignment with who God is and what it means to take this faith and take your works and what you do and how we line all this up together. That was his purpose. So that's the why. But what's the what? What was he really wanting them to do? When we read James 1, when we read it again, it says, remember, it says, consider this, right? Consider it pure joy. That's tough. My brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, okay, what do I do with that? Right? I mean, at first blush, it sounds like we should be saying that our trials are joy. That we should enjoy the trials that we're in, and that's not what he's saying. He's saying what we are to do is to experience joy in the trial. Experience joy. Not that the joy itself is not that the trial itself is joyful, but we as Christ followers are to find joy and experience joy in the trial. If you read the email I sent out this week, it started off with, some of you might have had a week that didn't go the way you thought it was going to go. I wrote that from my own personal experience. After the storm hit, there were mechanical issues, HVAC issues, roofing issues in our building all week long. And that is a pure distraction when you're trying to do the other things that need to be done to make a Sunday happen. And there was trial after trial after trial. There was a moment I sat down with Jeremy. He's on our staff. If you've not met Jeremy, he's a guy you want to meet. And we were sitting there, and I just put my head in my hands, and I said, Jeremy, I've got to find joy in this. And we were talking about the message this morning, and he looked at me and he said, you know, you're getting ready to speak to everyone about trials in life, right? And I said, yeah, and I'm living them all week long. From one to the next to the next. I felt like I could never get caught up. I felt like I was always behind. I felt like we were trying to resolve so many different problems that had nothing to do other than having lights on and the AC working with us sitting in here. Anybody else this week ever feel like that? And you're just like, I can't get any traction. And you're telling me I'm supposed to experience joy in that? That's the challenge. And it's tough. And it's real. And I want you to know you're not alone. Whatever you're experiencing, you are not alone in those trials, because at times it can feel like it's only you. You look around, you're like, they look happy, they got everything going, they just got to do this, they just went on that trip, look at their social media, they must have no trials. It's not the case. When we look at what's our target? When we think about our trials, and I'm supposed to find joy in those, what's an example where that's ever worked? Because I'm going to tell you, even as I've gone through this week, I'm like, okay, God, I'm still trying to find it. Okay, God, I'm still trying to find it. Okay, God, where is it? I don't see it. But if you read in the book of Acts, ACTS, it's the 5th book in the New Testament. It was written by Luke, Luke was telling the story of Paul. And in this story, we see that Paul and a group of apostles were called in front of the Sanhedrin court. This is like our Supreme Court. They kept the law. They were the keepers of the law. They could say life or death. And they pulled Paul and other apostles in front of them and said, you have to stop talking about Jesus. And they said, well, we're not going to do it. So they had to testify. They told all about it, and they said, we don't know what to do with you, so we're going to flog you. Now, at first blush, you're like, flogging? How bad can that be? Well, when you dig into it and research in, they said 40 floggings or 40 lashings was equal to death. And so what they would do, rather than kill them, is they would only give them 39. And if you've heard of this thing called a cat of nine tails, it was 9 leather strips. It could be a variation of this that would have something on the end that would rip your skin apart. So they would hit you with it, and then it would maybe come over your shoulder, and then they would rip it back, and it pulled all the skin with it. 39 times. That's what happened to Paul. And you've heard the term salt in a wound? Well, also history says that then they would take salt. And as they let them go to live, they would dump salt in their wounds and send them out. You got a picture of what Paul and the apostles went through? And I'm just complaining about the HVAC issue, right? But here's what we read in Acts chapter 5, verse 41. I hope one day I could get to this place. Here's what it says. The apostles left the Sanhedrin rejoicing. What? Rejoicing. Because they had been counted worthy of suffering disgrace for the name. It just says for the name. That's a capital N, that's a proper noun. You could say for Jesus, for the name of Jesus. They left rejoicing. You're seeing the challenge for this week. The challenge is, how do we rejoice in that? When you know this, John chapter 16, verse 33, in that verse, there's more to it than this, but I pulled this part out. It says, in this world, there will be trouble. In this world, there will be trouble. And hey, this morning, if you're like, hey, I'm not a Christ follower, so this must not pertain to me. No, that pertains to all of us, right? In this world, there will be troubles. There will be trials. Right, verse 2 even said trials of many kinds. Not just one, we all know that, right? It's back to our puzzle idea, the micro challenges. There's this challenge, there's that challenge, there's that challenge, there's this challenge. We feel like we have one trial, one challenge on top of another. And they keep coming. Look back at verse 2, where he says, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, when you face trials of what kind? Many kinds. When you face trials of many kinds, we're going to face them. We're going to face those trials. But I love verse 3, verse 4, and verse 5. Because if I just left you at verse 2, you're like, man, I don't know that I want to go back to that place. Because is that what we're going to experience? And there is the truth. That is the truth in that. But in verse 3, we get to see the because. Right? Consider it pure joy, your trials. And here's why. Because you know that the testing of your faith, so your trials test your faith, produce perseverance. Right? The trials that you have. You're like, well, why do they make me question God? Because they're testing your faith, right? Even if it's the simple ones, like anybody else but me get frustrated when I sit at a traffic light in town that seems to go on forever and nobody has the green light. I'm like, what? Who set this stuff up? And for some reason that will test my faith. Yet at the same time, you get that diagnosis, you get that call from the boss that says, come to my office. That'll test your faith too. Right? Whatever it is, all those things, all those trials we live through in life, from the smallest to the biggest, they test our faith. But I love in verse 3 that it says it does that so that it produces perseverance. Now you read the word perseverance, that's a great Scrabble word. You can get a lot of points off of that. It's a big 4-syllable word. And you kind of go, I think I know what it means, but I came up with these other words that you may identify with more. Well, when you hear this, you may grab hold of one of these, and this is what you take away. And you think, in my trials, my challenges, I go through those because of this, because what they produce is steadfastness. Maybe you're like, ooh, I like that one. Or I like staying power. The more trials that I persevere, the more trials that I walk through, I have staying power. I have endurance. I have toughness. Right? Resilience. I think more people need more resilience. And then a word that's kind of taken off, and it's the one that I identify with most, it's grit. That the trials you walk through, they produce grit. They produce this ability, right? And you see it in my hands, and this is what I feel like when I face that trial. I'm like, okay, come on. Because God, you've walked me through that one. I believe you'll walk me through this one, even though in the moment I've got head in hands and I don't see how it's going to work out. But here's the struggle. For some of you sitting here right now, and you think about your trials, you're not feeling resilient. You're not feeling grit. You're feeling sorrow. Because of where you are in life, you're feeling bitterness. Right? This is what your trials are creating in you. You're feeling weariness. You're ready to rake the puzzle off the table and put it back in the box because you're feeling frustration. You're feeling resentment. Right? Bitterness is what you feel inside. Resentment is how you project that onto other people. Right? You've gone past just like, I don't like what I feel, and now you're saying, this is how I'm going to respond to you because of what I'm experiencing in my trials inside of me. Anyone feeling that? We know what we're aiming for, but I think it's very fair to say that some of you, and me, sometime during my week, I was feeling that. And what I had to continually remind myself was that trials are not a sign of God's displeasure. Trials are not a sign of God's displeasure, right? Remember, in this world, there will be trouble. And the reason we walk through those trials is because there's trouble in this world, but the reality is at times it feels like it. Right? We have to acknowledge that out loud. I think when you can acknowledge what we're feeling, then we can move toward to make progress and grow in our faith. Because the reality is trials are an opportunity to persevere in God, to stay steadfast, to have grit. And you got to walk through the trials. Verse 4, this is the hope. This is my excitement in it. I've been excited to share this because I'm like, it's so real to all of us, and I hope you'll grab hold of it. I hope you'll take it out of here today. Share it with somebody else. Right? Verse 4, it says, let perseverance finish its work. Because it's work, right? The trial you're in is work. But you have to let it finish its work so that, I love that phrase, so that, because when it finishes its work, but the work's not easy, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. You'll hear us talk about that there's phases of what it looks like to grow in our relationship with Jesus, that we discover, we explore, and we grow. I've said over and over that we're never grown. We're never all grown up in our faith. And when you read this and it says you're mature, that doesn't mean you're all grown up. What they're referencing is the fact that your faith is a mature faith, not a childlike faith. The thing we see, though, as perseverance is doing its work takes time, we can still feel overwhelmed. Right? I felt that this week. We can still feel isolated, mistreated, irritated. Fill in your own blank to how you feel when you just can't figure it all out. And you would say, I'm not capable, but you're saying, God, I want to. Right? And that's where I was. I was like, God, I want to understand this. I want to figure this out. Why is this such a distraction? And then I love where James takes us. James takes us in verse 5, and it's the ultimate hope. As a Christ follower, this is a prayer that we can all pray, that you will get the answer yes to. So as you persevere, Here's what it says. If any of you lacks wisdom, and we all do. If you think you don't, well, you probably don't want to hang out with those people, because if you've met people that think they're the smartest person in the room, they're probably the most annoying in the room, right? That's just my own little sidebar. That wasn't in my notes. But we all lack wisdom, right? So if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to him. Now, when I first read that, and you're just getting to read it this morning, like right here as you sit here, that verse can be a little bit confusing because you have those commas. You got a lot of like combined thoughts going on there. Like I don't think you would write that way in the English paper today. So I want to break this thing up because I don't want you to miss these two incredible promises that are extended to everyone who has put their trust in Jesus. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read it, and I'm going to take out the part between the commas and just read this. It says, if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, and it will be given to him, to you. Right? Doesn't that make a lot more sense? All you have to do is ask. If you lack wisdom, and we all do, as we're persevering the trials that we are in life, even if you're saying, God, I want to find the joy in it, but I just don't know how, then ask for wisdom. And he gives it to us. Then if you just read between the commas, here's what it says between the commas. This is what God does for you. This is awesome. God gives generously to all. You know who's included in all? All who've put their trust in him without finding fault. That's a gift. Like I know eternal life, I can't even get my arms around that. That's going to be absolutely awesome. But have you ever broke down the fact that in any moment when you're on the struggle bus and you cannot figure it out, simply pause and say, God, I can't figure this out and I can't make sense of it and I need wisdom. Sometimes if you're in a meeting or conversation, you can't say it out loud, just run it through your brain. And he hears it and he gives it. And then we have to process what we do with it. He gives us wisdom. It doesn't mean that everything is going to go away, right? It doesn't mean the trial is going to go away. It doesn't mean that life's all of a sudden going to get better. But what it does mean is that we have a better chance to process through it. So our challenge today, said very clearly, is for you to view your trials as an opportunity for growth. Because they're coming. Today, it's not a list of 10 things to do. The first thing that you need to do is it requires a change in mindset. You must change your mindset. In the moment that you're sitting in the trial, you're frustrated, you're isolated, you feel left out, whatever it is you're feeling, if you can just process, I need to consider my trial that I'm walking through as an opportunity for growth. And God, I need more wisdom because I can't do it on my own. That's it. That's your challenge. But it's not easy because you get pulled into it. So I want to help you see it another way. Grab your puzzle piece. When you look at your puzzle, you look at this piece, remember life and a puzzle are not that much different, right? Both are full of challenges. Right? When you look at this one piece of this puzzle, if I said to you, look at this piece and tell me what this puzzle looks like. Like, go ahead and make a mental picture of what is this? Is this a puzzle of cars? Is it a puzzle of dogs playing poker? Right? What does this puzzle make? And as you look at your one piece, if I said to you, here, take a guess, you'd be like, you're crazy, man. There's no way I can tell because I only get to see one piece. Now think about this. This is your life. This is the trial. If I ask you, based on the one trial that you're walking through right now, what's the bigger picture that trial is moving you toward? What's the bigger picture that trial, think of what it is. What is God trying to do with that? In the moment, you're like, I don't have a clue. No more than we have a clue what this puzzle is going to look like. See, I think the thing we have to remember is that God has this big picture, this huge picture that he's creating for each and every one of us. The hard part is we only get one piece at a time. And sometimes the piece that you get, the piece that you're holding, it's a dumpster fire. And you want to give it away and you want to be done and you just want to rake it off and throw it right back in the box and say, I'm done. But we don't have that choice with life. I encourage you with this piece of puzzle, and I want you to take it with you, and I want you to put it somewhere that you're going to see it throughout the week. Remember that your trials are part of a bigger picture. You just get a little bit. Even if you got all the red ones together and you've put all those together and they look so great, maybe you've got the border all together, but you still can't see what it is in your life because we don't see the big picture. Remember, God has a big picture of your life and my life. And the trials you walk through are not a disappointment. He's not disappointed in you. The trials that we're walking through allow us to create perseverance so that we can live a more Christ-like life. You think about the picture that he has for your life. For me, when I say that out loud, I'm envisioning I don't know what it's going to be like in heaven, but I think that's when I'll begin to put all the pieces together and go, that's why that happened, and that's why that happened, and that's why that happened. And it's one of the reasons I look forward to eternity. I'm not in a hurry to leave here, but I think when I get there, the big picture is going to become clear. And while I can't tell you what your life is going to look like, I can tell you what the big picture of this puzzle looks like. Right? We're going to put it on the screen behind me. This is the big picture of the puzzle that you're holding in your hand. You hold a piece to that. And it's amazing. It's a beautiful topography. The mountains, the snow, the water, the reflection of the sun off of that, the colors. And if you could see that, if you can walk with this analogy that God's got this picture that's even better than that of your life. But sometimes all we get is this. And sometimes we just want to rake it in the box because we're done. But I encourage you to remember that God sees this big, incredible, amazing picture. But he only gives us one piece at a time. And we just have to keep trusting. We just have to keep walking. Our challenge is to view your trials as opportunities for growth. We're on a journey. I'm going to end with this morning. I think if James was here, James, the writer of the book of James, Jesus' brother who gave us this wonderful challenge, right? He was known for presenting practical theology. Practically saying, this is how you do it. This is how you live your life. I think this is what James would encourage each and every one of us with. He would say, don't give up. Don't give up on life. And don't give up on God. God's got a big picture. And you're in it. And he has a plan. Consider the trials you walk through as a way to grow you in your faith. Let me pray for us this morning. God, I thank you. I thank you that when you sent your son Jesus and extended your grace to us, and God, when he came back to join you in heaven, you didn't leave us alone. You didn't leave us here. But God, we can know that you're preparing a place for us that's absolutely beyond our wildest imaginations. But God, in the meantime, allow us to have perseverance. Give us grit. Give us the endurance we need to persevere the trials on this earth. God, in each situation, as we deal with it, help us to have a mindset change. That in the very moment when we're at our peak of frustration, our peak of sorrow, our peak of weariness, God, that we can pull back and we can call on you and ask for wisdom. God, thank you that you give it. God, we love you. Thank you that we can call you our Heavenly Father and that you see us as your sons and daughters. And we pray all these things in your Son's name. Amen.